Welcome everyone to my September 17th, 2024 webinar called Inside Out, Dealing with the Energy Held in Our Emotions. Inside Out and Inside Out 2 are movies, animated movies, that they're about Riley, a pre-adolescent girl in the first one and an adolescent girl entering high school in the second one. And the movies are about her emotions: anger, sadness, joy, disgust, anxiety, and then there's some other disdain and a few other things that get rolled in the second movie. And they are represented, these emotions are represented as characters in her head, and they're beautifully illustrated, animated in the movies. The creators made the characters look like what they thought the emotions should look like. As characters are all different from one another. They're different colors, sizes, shapes. And I'm just thinking there's one kind of big puffy one. I think he's called Embarrassment. And he has a tough time. They all kind of have a tough time, particularly in the adolescence in the second movie. And so the movies are a lot of fun to watch. And when I watched them, as much as I was charmed to see that they dealt with a subject that is very important in my work, they were a lot of fun to watch. And I just pretty much just watched the movies without analyzing them at all. And I quite tempted to go back and see them again. They're available online now, so they're easy to get to. And as I said, they're a lot of fun to watch. They're really well done. But these characters in her head, they're often in conflict and they fight over a mythical control console. So they're kind of like one will be at the console and the others be kind of crowded up around, and they're trying to, sometimes they push each other out of the way and try to take over. And so that represents the internal conflicts within somebody, that they have different feelings, different emotions about things. And so it gives a nice portrayal of that kind of a situation. Riley's emotions also struggle to deal with her memories, and she has a lot of memories, and they're represented by beautiful balls that have kind of a lucent quality to them. They're about that size, and so those memories they're serve as a kind of attachment, and so things come up that trigger the memories or the recollection of that. And so at some point they go on a quest to find happy memories, sort of thing. It's really a charming way of representing the dynamics in one's head. So there's the internal stuff dealing with the memories, and then there's all the external stuff having to relate to an outside world, the kinds of relationships that they have. And the movies do quite a bit with relationships with family and school and friends and that sort of thing. But this internal, external, and seeing what's going on inside a child's mind, also her parents' mind. So there's there's an interplay between them that is really quite charming. The movies don't talk much about presence. Well, they don't use the word presence at all, but they do convey the idea that each emotion has a place and a function within our personality, and that by acknowledging our emotions, Riley can find some stability and capacity to function amidst memories and external challenges. And so there's a lot that can be learned, if you will, about emotions and emotional intelligence from watching these movies. Um, in our experience, in our personal experience, just think about it for a moment. Our emotions work within our minds, as you heard. We feel them. We think them. We actually, mostly it's a bodily sensation, and that has a lot to do with the extensive nervous system that exists within our body, with from here down. That really has about as many neurons as our brain has. is a huge network of neurons within our physical bodies, as I say, from the collarbones down. And they feel things. They are literally physical sensations or sensations that we'd say we have. And we use those to know everything, to know whether something that we think in our minds, some conscious thought, whether it's true or not. And it's a very important part. Now, our emotions are always a thing we have to, quote, deal with. They can easily get exaggerated, but they can also get suppressed, things we don't feel. Now, exaggerated emotions are things like panic, rage, melancholy, sadness, exuberance, and our suppressed emotions leave us, when emotions are suppressed, then we feel nothing. We feel flat or empty. And so sometimes when I'm working with a client, I don't know if any of you may have been one of those clients. Sometimes I'll say, sounds like there's something inside that feels, and the response I get is, I don't feel anything. There's nothing there. And that is a response. That is a possible response. And then we have to explore about not feeling. And so there's something inside that doesn't want us to feel into whatever situation we're talking about. Exaggerated emotions are easier to locate, because they're intense. Um, and so emotional intelligence, I'll try to use a little bit of the definition that I got from the experts, but as I contemplated, as I read through this material and was studying it, um, I was reminded that I don't really like the way professionals work with or or conceive of how our emotional life works and what emotional intelligence is. But let me give you a little bit of a definition. One of the many definitions I found, and there were many, is the ability to perceive, use, understand, manage, and handle. I don't know what the difference is between those two words. Emotions. Perceive, use, understand, and handle emotions. Um, there are various models of emotional intelligence. One is a trait model. Um, one is an ability model. There's a kind of mixed model. Um, and there are all kinds of intelligences that are defined by different experts. There's interpersonal intelligence, the capacity to understand the intentions, motivations, and desires of other people. And there's intrapersonal intelligence, the capacity to understand, to appreciate one's own feelings, fears, and motivations. Um, I think that even that wording is strange because fears is a kind of feeling. So it's to understand and appreciate one's own feelings and motivations, desires, goals, needs. The needs isn't even mentioned in the material I was reading. And of course, I have done quite a bit of work with nonviolent communication, where the one of the first things you do in nonviolent communication is to step past your so you might say the chaos, the way you're reacting to things, your judgments and complaining and blaming and so on, to get to feelings and then needs, and well, starting with observations actually, to make observations about what is going on, what is the reality of the situation, and then what are my feelings, what are my needs. So that's the kind of language that I prefer to use, which is, as you can see, one of the reasons why I stay away from what I might call academic psychology. Um, I prefer to leave the psychology out. I always have. Um, I think anybody who's worked with me knows that I don't play the role of a psychologist. We work with our emotions and the things that have happened to us, our memories, our thoughts, our memes, the rules that we have in our head. We work with them in very different ways than psychologists do. We don't play the psychology game. Now, when I'm talking about leaving that out, then we'll consider how we know something, because this is really important to understanding what emotions mean to us. So consider how we know something is true. Okay. We feel within our body something that tells us it's that we believe it is true or that it is not true. We have what we often call a gut feeling, and usually it is literally in the intestinal area, right? All those nerves that innervate and take sensations from the gut and put motor functions into the gut. Um, and so we have this feeling within us, whether something is true or not. And then our brain rationalizes our belief that something is or is not true and gives us an intellectually satisfying understanding of our position, our opinion, our belief that something is or is not true. There's a wonderful analogy, a story is told about when a when an elephant is out in the jungle but is being guided by a mahout. That's the guy that sits on top of the elephant's neck, and tells it where to go and when to. Um, if the elephant senses the presence of a tiger, the elephant will take defensive activity. It'll basically go confront the tiger. It'll face it, and it'll call for other elephants to come to line up to face the tiger. That's usually sufficient to scare the tiger away. And the mahout can do whatever it wants, he wants or she. They're almost always boys or young men, or even older men for that matter. Um, and the mahout may try to tell the elephant, to do something different, but the elephant, sensing the danger, is going to do that. The elephant has a feeling, and it responds to the feeling rather than to the intellectual guidance of the mahout on its neck. In other words, feelings precede thinking. It's a very important concept. Our feelings precede our thinking, our rational processing. So, our definition of emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive emotions and to use emotional information to guide our behavior. And we sometimes use the term, well, the experts sometimes use the term emotional quotient, like intelligence quotient. Um, but let's not go there. Because how do you measure it? And there's many ways that have been proposed to measure it. And that's a whole academic discussion, not relevant to the work that I do. So our ability to perceive emotions and to use emotional information to guide behavior, that is our working definition of emotional intelligence. So how do we do that on a practical level? How do we work? How do we use emotional intelligence? And then, of course, how do we increase it? So the way we use it um, is that we have an emotional experience. We have a feeling. We use the word feeling usually. We have an emotional experience, and that influences how we relate to a situation. Maybe we're relating to somebody else, and we pick up on things, facial expressions, body language, the tone of the voice, um, rate of speech, and all those other kind of cues that tell us where this person is at, what kind of attitude they have towards us. Are they warm? Are they trying to be close to us? Are they being authoritarian? Just exactly what kind of relationship are they creating in us? And we're reacting to that. And then we get to choose if we can. And in order to do that, that means we have to have a degree of presence, of self awareness, and of steady capacity to observe without reacting. So we can observe our reactions to the situation. And we can feel empathy. That's another big component here. We can feel empathy towards the person, understanding who they are, where they're coming from, what they need, what they want, what their goals are. Now, some people are good at hiding those things or making themselves appear differently. They may appear very friendly. We call those con artists, right? That they con us into believing that they're our friend and they have our well-being at heart, when in fact they only have their own well-being at heart, whatever it is their goal is. And so that puts them somewhere on that narcissism spectrum that we talked about a couple of webinars ago. So we can we can sense into where we are at, what emotions are being stirred up in us, and where other people are at. That is emotional intelligence in its practical application. And how well we do that, how well we attend to our own emotional state and our empathy, or sensing into other people, gives us a measure of our emotional intelligence, even if other people can't really do anything with it. I need a sip. So that's how we use emotional intelligence, by creating, well, we increase it by creating more and more presence within us. And we do that by transcending, repeated transcending, by developing a capacity to be an observer from that state. And we have techniques which I have used probably with all of you who are on the webinar, who have worked with me in the past, where we even use language to help to create a sense of presence, a space between ourself, our true self, who is the witness of our experience, and our experience, what is the witnessed part. So we can develop that emotional intelligence. And, it doesn't hurt to have some intellectual understanding of all of this, which is why I'm doing the webinar, so that we can learn, by being able to tune into what is going on inside me, rather than just reacting on the basis of what's going on inside me, but actually tune into that, see what's going on, see what's going on in the other person, what we're observing, what we're sensing in them, and then working with that. And when I do my work, the difference is that I sit in that state of presence and see what is going on in another person, what factors are there, what emotions are there, what influences are there on them, past, present, sometimes future, and you know and then help a person see what that is, see what's going on. And I can do that silently, or I can do that where a person is conscious of what is being observed and what it needs. And if you've worked with me, you know that a lot of that, when I do it consciously, a person is aware of a feeling, and often a deeper feeling, and sometimes more and more layers of feeling, and unraveling all the energy that's tied up in that. My work has to do with the energy that's held in our emotions, hence the title of my lecture. The movies, Inside Out and Inside Out 2, they show a lot of the dynamics, and they show that there is energy bound up in that, but they're not very explicit about saying that. But in my work, we're very explicit about the energy. Now, I may or may not say that out loud to anybody. I may just be aware of that. Oh, there's this, what we call an energy tangle. And then I can work on just the subtle level, just untangling that. What are the components of that? Because the emotions are often in conflict. And one of the great things in the movie is to see how each emotion has its own character. That's basic theme of the movie. Each has its own character, or is its own character, and those characters are often competing. And as I said, competing for control of the control console. And so they go up to the control console and they push buttons, and then things get expressed out loud. So Riley will roll her eyes, or she'll burst out in anger or disgust or dismay. And as an adolescent, her different feelings come through very strongly, as I say, very exaggerated. And her parents, of course, are aware of her adolescence, but perplexed often as to what is going on inside her, because she doesn't, like most adolescents, doesn't reveal the what she thinks is the cause of her, outburst. Um, and so the movie does a great job. Movies do a great job of presenting how the emotions can be in conflict, or how they're hiding out. They're not being present. They're not showing up, particularly where they might be needed. And then there's the whole thing about memory and how memory interacts. And of course, in my work, we often have to, come up with the memories of things. But unlike in psychology, it's not to relive experiences, but to identify what emotions are associated with experiences, so that, and particularly if there's pain involved, person is hurt and sad and reacting, to tease all of that apart so we can see the whole spectrum of that, and be, from our position of presence, be present with those emotions so they can relax and dissipate the energy that's tied up in that. So my work is all about the energy, and I'm always sensing into how much energy is tied up in that. It's not measured energy. It's the feeling of, wow, this is really carrying a lot of energy, or maybe it's not carrying so much anymore. And as we work through various, often, childhood, past lifetime, familial patterns, whatever, as we deal with all of those things, I can sense that energy relaxing, dissipating, opening up, so that the whole bodily energy system can function normally. And in that case, all kinds of personality, change, like emotional intelligence, can improve, sense of well-being, peace within, bliss within, can develop, that a person can feel freer to deal with what's going on. And that's a really, really important thing to have with that emotional intelligence: the flexibility, the adaptability, and the capacity for happiness. Um, I had an inquiry today for somebody who basically said, I can't be happy. I'm depressed. And so, my job is to increase the capacity for happiness. And, it's going to be really fun working with that person. It's always fun working with people. I always enjoy my work very much. Um, and part of the reason I enjoy it is that I know transformations are going to take place. I know it's going to happen. So I just have to allow nature to make those transformations. I use my tools, but the main tool I use is my presence, just being there with that person. And that's not on the social level. I mean, there may be some degree of that, but it's primarily on the energetic level. And as that being present in that way, I act as a catalyst. You've all heard me say that many times. I act as a catalyst to allow transformation to take place. And doing that, it's not my energy that does the transformation. I don't plan it, I don't execute it. Nature takes care of it. I just have to show up and be alert, be present, and do what I call, my teacher, Richard, called tracking what's going on, tracking the energy, tracking where my attention goes. And my attention is simply like a radar. It just picks up what's going on, tunes to that, and we deal with it. So that's what we do, in my work. Um, this might be a good place. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat. They will come to me. Um, Next webinar will be October 8th, unless things change. Um, but I'm planning it for October 8th. There is a book out by Tony Nader, MD, PhD, called Consciousness is All That There Is. And Dr. Nader is currently the head of Maharishi's organization worldwide. Um, and this book is something you might say of a summary of Maharishi's knowledge. Doesn't cover every aspect, but it's wonderful. And we will focus very much on the aspect of that consciousness is all that there is, um, focusing on wellness based on being, which is my working theme. Wellness based on being present, being oneself, um, transcendental to or beyond all attributes, physical, mental, emotional, like that. So that will be the topic for next month, October 8th. Haven't seen any questions pop up. So I think I'll end the presentation here because I'm really excited to get down to actually doing the group clearing session. So wonderful question. Just came in. So I will read the question. When people get messages as they feel into their emotions body, is that nature at work? Can be. The fundamental challenge is to know when things pop into our head, so to speak, when we hear the message or sometimes see it, and we can touch, taste, and smell it, but that's, if you have really good subtle perception. But when people get messages that have to do with their feelings in the body, their emotions, um, the way we trust what we get is that they come spontaneously and that we're not trying to rationalize them or create that we don't bring an expectation to what we're getting. So the thing about emotional intelligence is reading what is there from that state of presence. I experienced this and this and this. And I'm pausing there deliberately to sense into what is there. And then you may get a word or a phrase or an idea. And you just kind of check, does that resonate? Does that feel true? Does it feel valid? When I say that, I had talked earlier about how do we know something's true? It's a feeling that we get. And we become familiar. That feeling means true. Some other feeling means not true, false. So when we get messages, when we're sensing into our emotions, into our body, if it comes completely spontaneously and it feels true, then we go with it. Now, when we say true, what we really mean is valid for us. If it's about something that perhaps that may have happened, it's how it's valid for us. If somebody else had been there, they may see it differently. They may remember it differently. And eyewitness accounts are notoriously varied. They're not untrue. They're true for the person, whereas if they're being honest, not making it up, not trying to influence others with the story. But if it's something that's we say, can you tell us what happened? And they say, this is what I remember happening. It may or may not be, if somebody had made a video recording and not doctored it with AI, if they'd made a video recording, then you get some record that you think, oh, that's an accurate record. But oftentimes, even video recordings are not sufficient to give us an actual valid review because they may miss things, may not see things in the video, you may not hear them. So I hope you get my point in making this response that we have to use the criteria. How do we trust what shows up? Now, for me, it's pretty easy because I have no imagination, about as little as you can have. When I do my work and stuff shows up, I've learned that I can trust that. I have a good feeling about it as it shows up. It's like, oh, is that valid? Yes, that's valid. You know, because I can't make this stuff up. I can't create stories like that. What I hear and see and often feel is just what is valid. There's a little bit different from the word true, but it's valid. Is it nature at work? Yes. And nature does all the work, at least if you use it the way I do, where I just stay present, then everything just shows up. Nature takes care of it. Nature makes the transformations. I don't do anything. I don't expend my energy. I had that conversation with somebody recently. And it's very important to understand, you don't want to be using your energy if you're working with other people. And I'm sure you've had experiences with people who afterwards you go like, wow, that was draining, right? Because you're caught up in the experience like that rather than being present. And so you may have to sit and collect yourself, as we say, and become present again and go like, ah, I see. They were saying these kind of things and I was responding such. Okay, I hope that answers your question. There's another, I think it's a question. Let me read it. In the first movie, pardon me, the character of Joy, especially at the beginning, seemed to be the manager and was trying to control some of the others. Yes, very much so. Just wanted your brief thoughts on that. Um, it could have been any of the emotions, but joy was kind of the quality of Riley as a kid. And if you think about children you've known, perhaps your own, um, joy is a dominant emotion because sadness is feels heavy and uncomfortable and unhappy. And so joy is the positive side, but a person always has all of the emotions. And so joy tends to want to run the control panel. And she has to learn eventually to respect the other emotions and their contributions to Riley's whole personality and the means that Riley has of dealing with life and dealing with her memories. So I hope that's useful. If there's anything else, throw it in the comment right now, the chat. And I think with that, I will wrap up this section, and then we will move on to the group clearing session. I'm going to stop the recording.